While searching for my wife in her office, my eyes landed on a gold-plated pen engraved with my daughter's name. The moment I picked it up, I heard a quiet, mechanical click. Before I could even process it, a section of the wall beside the bookshelf slowly slid open, revealing something that had been hidden in plain sight. Curiosity and a growing sense of dread pulled me forward. When I stepped inside, what I discovered made my hands shake and stole the air from my lungs. Because the truth I had been searching for all this time had been locked away in that room. Thank you for being here. Before we continue, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below to let me know where you're watching from. I always enjoy seeing how far these stories travel. A quick note before we begin: this is a fictional narrative with dramatized elements created for storytelling and educational purposes. Any similarities to real people or events are purely coincidental, though the message behind the story is meaningful. Now let me tell you what happened next. The Seattle rain had been falling since early morning, steady and relentless. I drove through it anyway, the windshield wipers beating a slow rhythm against the glass, a rhythm that seemed to echo the tension coiled deep inside my chest. I needed to see Monica, needed to talk to her, needed to hold on to something, anything that didn't constantly remind me that my daughter had been missing for 6 months and 3 days. Columbia Center rose ahead of me like a dark monolith against the heavy gray sky of November. 76 floors of glass, steel, and ambition. Vail Development Corporation had occupied the 28th floor for 18 years. Jennifer and I had built this company together from nothing but determination and sleepless nights. Now, walking toward it, the place felt strangely unfamiliar, like I was stepping into someone else's life. I parked in my reserved spot and stepped into the elevator lobby, barely registering the usual sounds around me. The elevator hummed as it climbed floor by floor. Normally I noticed things like that, the small details of routine, but my mind had been somewhere else for months. Ever since April 15th. That was the day they found Chloe's car abandoned near Rattlesnake Ledge. The doors had been left open. The keys were still inside. Her phone was there too, its screen cracked. Her wallet. Her jacket. Everything except Chloe. The elevator doors slid open on the 28th floor. Our reception area looked exactly the way Jennifer had designed it years ago. Dark wood panels, soft lighting, and understated elegance that made clients feel comfortable the moment they walked in. Amanda Clark sat behind the curved reception desk, typing something on her computer. When she looked up and saw me, her smile faltered for just a second. "Mr. Vail," she said gently, "I wasn't expecting you today." "Is Monica in?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Amanda glanced at her screen. "She's with a client right now. A design consultation. It should be finished in about 20 minutes. She hesitated slightly. "Would you like me to let her know you're here?" I shook my head. "No, that's all right. I'll wait in her office. Monica had given me a key months ago, shortly after we were married. I could still remember the moment clearly. She had placed the small silver key into my palm and smiled. "You're always welcome in my space," she'd said. At the time, it had felt like trust, like closeness, like we were building something real together. Now, walking down the quiet hallway toward her corner office, I wasn't sure what that feeling had been. The door unlocked with a soft click. I stepped inside. Monica's office was nothing like mine. Where my workspace was clean and minimal, hers was warm and inviting. Soft fabrics, carefully selected artwork, subtle touches of color that made the room feel comfortable instead of corporate. A large mahogany desk stood near the window overlooking Elliott Bay. On clear days, you could see the Olympic Mountains stretching across the horizon. Today, there was only fog. I sat down in one of the leather chairs facing the desk, letting the silence settle around me. The room carried the faint scent of Monica's perfume, light floral, expensive. For a moment I closed my eyes and just breathed. When I opened them again, my attention drifted toward the desk. It was perfectly organized as always. Monica was meticulous about her workspace. Everything had a place. A silver pen holder sat near the corner. Beside it was a small succulent in a ceramic pot. A leather-bound planner rested neatly beside a stack of design sketches. And lying slightly off to the side, almost as if someone had placed it down quickly, was a pen. Not just any pen. A Mont Blanc. Gold-plated. Elegant. Heavy in a way that made it feel important the moment you picked it up. I stared at it. My heart skipped. I knew that pen. A strange chill ran through me as I leaned forward and reached across the desk. My fingers closed around the smooth metal barrel. It felt exactly the way I remembered, just above the clip, etched so delicately that you could miss it. If you weren't looking closely, were two engraved words, Chloe Vale. The breath rushed out of my lungs. I turned the pen slowly in my hand, my mind racing for some explanation, any explanation that might make sense of what I was seeing. But there was no mistake. Jennifer and I had purchased this pen 4 years earlier from a small stationery shop in Pioneer Square. It had been a birthday gift for Chloe when she turned 18. We had spent nearly half an hour debating the engraving font. Chloe had loved it the moment she opened the box. "This makes me feel professional," she'd laughed. "Like a real adult." After that, she carried it everywhere. Classes, cafes, study sessions late into the night. She once told me she'd never lose it, but Chloe had been missing since April. The police had found her car parked near the trail access road outside the city. Search and rescue teams had combed the forests surrounding Rattlesnake Ledge for weeks. They had found nothing. After a month, Detective Hayes had sat across from me in my living room and spoken the words I never wanted to hear. "Mr. Vale, at this point, we have to consider the possibility that Chloe may not be coming back." I had stopped listening after that. So why was her pen here? On Monica's desk, I stood slowly, still gripping the pen, my thoughts racing through every possible explanation. Maybe Chloe had visited Monica before she disappeared. Maybe she had accidentally left it behind. Maybe no. That didn't make sense. Chloe and Monica had never been close. My daughter had always been polite but distant. There was no reason she would have been here alone, unless something had happened here. I looked down at the pen again. Something about it felt different. Heavier, much heavier than I remembered. Curiosity, or maybe something deeper, something instinctive, made me grip it more firmly. I pulled upward. Nothing happened. For a moment. Then I heard it, a faint, mechanical click. The sound was soft, but unmistakable, like the quiet release of a hidden lock. I froze. Behind Monica's desk, the wall lined with bookshelves trembled slightly. Then slowly, almost silently, the entire section began sliding sideways. Books, portfolios, and decorative objects moved with it, as if the entire structure were mounted on hidden rails. A narrow gap appeared where the wall had been. Behind it was darkness and stairs. A steep staircase descending into a space that should not have existed beneath an office floor. I stood there motionless, the pen still clutched in my hand, as I stared into the black void beyond the hidden doorway. My heart pounded violently against my ribs. My mouth had gone dry. Somewhere down the hallway, I heard the faint chime of an elevator arriving. Voices drifted through the corridor outside. I should have stepped back. I should have called Amanda. I should have asked questions. Instead, I stepped forward. Then another step. And another. The darkness closed around me as I descended the staircase, and within seconds it swallowed me completely. The air shifted the moment I started descending the staircase. It grew colder with every step. Heavier. Stagnant. The kind of air that feels trapped, as if it hasn't moved or breathed in years. I placed my left hand against the wall to steady myself. The surface was rough concrete, slightly damp beneath my fingertips. I used it to guide my way downward as my eyes struggled to adjust to the darkness. The staircase was narrow and steep, clearly not meant for frequent use. Each step felt uneven, forcing me to move carefully. Without realizing it, I began counting. 10, 15, 20. By the time I reached the bottom, my eyes had started to adjust. A faint glow illuminated the space ahead. A single LED light hung from the ceiling, casting a pale, sterile brightness across the room below. For a moment, my mind refused to understand what I was seeing. It was a room. Not large, maybe 12 feet by 15. The walls were lined with thick foam panels, the kind used in recording studios or interrogation rooms. Soundproofing. The realization hit my stomach like a sudden drop. In one corner stood a narrow bed with a thin mattress and a plain gray blanket folded across it. Beside the bed sat a small table holding a bottle of water and several protein bars still sealed in plastic wrappers. Across from it was a small refrigerator, the type you might see in a college dorm room. There was also a narrow door set into the wall, probably a bathroom, and mounted high in the far corner, angled so it could see the entire room, was a security camera. A tiny red light blinked steadily. Watching. Recording. The room was disturbingly clean. Everything was arranged neatly, almost carefully. Whoever had built this place had planned it down to the smallest detail. I took a hesitant step forward, my mind struggling to absorb the reality unfolding in front of me. And then I saw her. At first, she was just a shape beneath the gray blanket. A figure lying on the bed, curled on her side with her back toward me. Her body looked small, too small. For a long moment, I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. Her hair was dark, longer than I remembered, tangled and dull, as if it hadn't been properly brushed in months. Her shoulders looked painfully thin beneath the blanket. One hand rested against the pillow, the fingers pale and fragile. Chloe. My voice cracked as I spoke her name. The figure stirred. Slowly, she rolled onto her back and blinked up at the dim light above her. Her eyes shifted across the room, unfocused at first. Then they landed on me. They widened instantly, not with recognition, with disbelief. The kind of disbelief someone shows when they think they're looking at a ghost. Chloe, I said again, my voice shaking. This time my body moved before my mind could catch up. I crossed the small room in 3 quick steps and dropped to my knees beside the bed. She pushed herself up, slowly leaning on one elbow as she stared at me. Her face looked painfully thin, her cheekbones sharper than they should have been. Dark shadows circled beneath her eyes and her lips were dry and cracked. But it was her. It was unmistakably her. My daughter. Alive. Dad. The word came out as a fragile whisper. I reached toward her instinctively. She flinched. It was subtle, just a slight movement backward, but it was enough to make my heart twist painfully in my chest. Then something in her expression changed. Understanding. Recognition. She realized I was real. This wasn't another nightmare, not another hallucination in the dark. And suddenly she collapsed forward, straight into my arms. The sobs came instantly. Deep, uncontrollable sobs that shook her entire body. I wrapped my arms around her tightly, one hand cradling the back of her head, while the other held her thin shoulders against me. My own tears fell before I even realized I was crying. "You're here," she kept repeating between sobs. "You're really here." "I'm here, sweetheart," I whispered. "I'm here. I've got you." After a moment, I gently pulled back just enough to look at her properly. My heart broke all over again. She was pale, far too pale. Her body was thinner than I'd ever seen it, as if months of fear and hunger had slowly drained the strength from her. Her hair was tangled. Her skin looked fragile, but her eyes were clear, alert. She was weak, but she was still here, still fighting. "How?" Her voice trembled. How did you find me? I glanced briefly toward the staircase behind me. Your pen, I said quietly. The Mont Blanc. Her brow furrowed. It was on Monica's desk, I continued. When I picked it up, the wall opened. I gestured toward the stairs behind me. Chloe's expression darkened. For a moment, something bitter crossed her face. She kept it, Chloe murmured. Her voice sounded hollow. She kept it like a trophy. The word lingered in the air. Chloe. I said urgently, "What happened? Where have you been?" The words caught in my throat. We thought you were gone. We thought the forest had swallowed you, that we would never. She drugged me. Chloe's voice was quiet but steady now. Monica. My jaw tightened instantly. When? I asked. 6 months ago, she said. April. Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke. She asked me to meet her here. Said she wanted to talk. Woman to woman. She said she wanted us to try and build some kind of relationship. A broken laugh escaped her lips. I didn't want to come, but I thought maybe I was being unfair to her. She swallowed hard. Maybe I should at least try. Chloe. She poured wine? She continued quietly. Said we should relax and talk. Her eyes drifted toward the floor. We talked for maybe 10 minutes. Then she inhaled slowly, and suddenly I felt dizzy. My fists tightened. She said I looked pale. Told me maybe I should sit down. Chloe's voice faded slightly. I remember sitting in her chair. Her eyes closed briefly, and then everything went black. When I woke up, she whispered, I was here. Rage burned inside my chest. Monica, my wife, the woman who had comforted me during every sleepless night. The woman who had held my hand while I grieved Chloe's disappearance. All that time she had known exactly where my daughter was. How long? I asked quietly. Chloe didn't answer immediately. Then she whispered, 6 months. The words felt like a knife. She comes down once a week. Chloe continued. She brings food, checks on me. Her voice cracked. She told me no one would ever find me? My throat tightened painfully. She said eventually the law would declare me gone. Chloe swallowed, and then it wouldn't matter anymore. I pulled her into my arms again. I'm so sorry, I whispered. God, Chloe, I'm so sorry. You didn't know, she said softly. Oh, how could you? But I should have known. That thought would haunt me forever. I had brought Monica into our lives, into our home. I had trusted her. But this wasn't the moment for guilt. Right now, there was only one thing that mattered. Getting Chloe out. Can you stand? I asked gently. She nodded, though uncertainty flickered across her face. I think so, she said weakly. I'm just really weak. Her voice faded. She doesn't give me much food. Just enough to keep me alive. I stood slowly and helped her to her feet. She swayed immediately. I wrapped my arm around her waist to steady her. She felt weightless. Okay, I said softly. We're getting you out of here. What about Monica? Chloe whispered. Her eyes drifted toward the camera mounted in the corner. She'll see. I don't care, I said firmly, and I meant it. Let her see. Let her know I had found what she had hidden. Come on, I said gently. We moved slowly toward the staircase. Chloe leaned heavily against me as we climbed. Her legs trembled with every step, but she kept moving, step by step, closer to freedom. When we reached the bottom step, I glanced back one last time. The sterile lighting, the soundproof walls, the blinking red camera. Someone had designed this room carefully, planned it, built it, turned it into a prison. And my wife had kept my daughter there. For 6 months. I tightened my grip around Chloe, and together we climbed toward the light. We reached the top of the staircase, just as the sharp, unmistakable click of high heels echoed down the hallway outside Monica's office. The sound froze the blood in my veins. For a split second, everything inside me went still. Dad, Chloe began softly. I immediately pressed a finger to my lips, signaling her to stay quiet. With my other hand, I gently but urgently pulled her toward the far wall of the room. My heart was pounding so violently that I was certain it would give us away. My hand slid across the wall, searching blindly, until my fingers brushed against the narrow seam of a service door I remembered seeing years earlier. Maintenance crews used it occasionally to reach the building's utility corridor. I pushed against it. The door gave way with a faint creak. We slipped inside, just as another set of footsteps passed in the hallway outside. The door closed behind us with a soft click. The corridor beyond was narrow and dimly lit, the concrete walls stained with age. The air smelled faintly of machine oil dust and old paint. Chloe leaned heavily against my shoulder, her entire body trembling with exhaustion. I could feel how weak she was, how fragile. For a moment, the only sound in the corridor was our breathing, ragged, uneven. I could hear Chloe trying to hold back tears. Behind us, faint voices filtered through the walls. Monica's voice carried down the hallway, muffled but unmistakable. She seemed to be speaking to someone, perhaps Amanda at the reception desk. My stomach twisted. "We have to move," I whispered. Chloe nodded weakly. At the far end of the service corridor stood an old freight elevator. The metal gate hung slightly open, its paint chipped and worn from years of use. I guided Chloe toward it, carefully keeping one arm around her waist to support her. Each step seemed to cost her more energy than the last. When we reached the elevator, I eased her inside and slid the heavy metal gate shut as quietly as I could. Then I pressed the button for the parking garage. The elevator shuddered. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the machinery groaned to life, and the car began its slow descent. Each floor felt like an eternity. I watched the numbers above the door tick downward. 27, 26, 25. Every passing second stretched endlessly as dread twisted inside my chest. All I could think about was the possibility that Monica might glance at the service panel upstairs and notice the elevator moving. That she might realize someone had used the hidden staircase. That she might realize Chloe was gone. The elevator creaked and rattled as it continued downward. Chloe leaned against me, her breathing shallow. I kept my arm around her shoulders, trying to keep her steady. Finally, after what felt like hours, but could not have been more than a minute, the elevator shuddered to a stop. The metal doors slid open. The dim concrete expanse of the underground parking garage stretched before us. I stepped out cautiously, scanning the rows of parked cars. No one. The garage was nearly empty. My car was parked near the rear exit. I tightened my grip around Chloe's waist and began moving toward it as quickly as I dared. She was frighteningly light in my arms. 6 months trapped in that room had drained her strength. By the time we reached the car, she was barely able to stand. I opened the back door and helped her climb inside. "Lie down," I said quietly. She obeyed without question, sliding across the seat. I quickly removed my coat and draped it over her. "Stay low," I whispered. "Don't let anyone see you." She nodded faintly, pulling the coat around herself. Her pale face disappeared beneath the dark fabric. I closed the door and rushed around to the driver's seat. My hands were shaking as I started the engine. I forced myself to breathe slowly, calm, controlled. I drove out of the garage as normally as possible, resisting the urge to accelerate. The rain greeted us the moment we emerged onto the street. Seattle's gray afternoon traffic stretched ahead in a familiar blur of brake lights and wet pavement. But nothing felt normal anymore. I checked the rearview mirror again and again, half expecting to see Monica's car appear behind us. But there was nothing. Only the steady rhythm of traffic, the rain, and the city moving on as if nothing had happened. I turned north toward Laurelhurst. There was only one place I trusted, only one person. Harold Peterson had been our family's lawyer for nearly 2 decades. He had helped draft Jennifer's will after her passing 5 years earlier. He had stood beside me during the darkest months of my grief. If anyone could help us now, it was Harold. His home sat at the end of a quiet street lined with tall trees and old houses, a brick Tudor covered in ivy-warm light glowing from the windows. I pulled into the driveway and grabbed my phone. "Emergency. At your door, please." I sent the message. Within seconds, the front door swung open. Harold stepped outside wearing a cardigan and house slippers, his silver hair slightly disheveled. He looked confused at first. Then he saw me. "Christopher," he said. "I need your help," I said urgently. I opened the back door of the car and gently helped Chloe sit up. Harold's face drained of color. "My God," he whispered. "Chloe." Behind him, his wife Linda appeared in the doorway. The moment she saw Chloe, her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my!" She rushed forward immediately and took Chloe's other arm, helping me guide her into the house. We brought her into the living room and lowered her carefully onto the couch. Linda disappeared into the kitchen and returned moments later, carrying a thick blanket and a glass of water. Chloe accepted the water with trembling hands. She drank slowly, as if every swallow required effort. Wrapped in the blanket, she looked painfully small. Her eyes were hollow, haunted. Harold sat down across from us, his expression tightening as his lawyer instincts took over. "Christopher," he said firmly. "Where has she been?" He paused. "We need to call the police." "No." The word came out sharper than I intended. "Not yet." Harold frowned. "Christopher," I told him everything. The Mont Blanc pen, the hidden wall behind Monica's bookshelf, the staircase, the room beneath her office, the camera, the prison where Chloe had been held. Harold listened without interrupting, but with every sentence his face grew darker. When I finished, he leaned back slowly and exhaled. "This is kidnapping," he said quietly. "You understand that, right?" "Yes." My voice cracked. "But if we call the police now, Monica will know something is wrong." Harold remained silent. "She'll destroy everything," I continued. "The room, the camera, any evidence that proves what she did." I rubbed my face tiredly. "Before anyone can even see it." Chloe spoke then. Her voice was barely louder than a whisper. "She drugged me." All 3 of us turned toward her. Chloe stared down at her hands. "6 months ago," she said softly. "April 15th. Her voice trembled. "Monica asked me to meet her for coffee. She said she wanted to talk, to clear the tension between us." She swallowed hard. I didn't trust her, but I thought, maybe we could try to get along. Her fingers tightened around the blanket. She put something in my drink. I woke up in that room. Silence filled the room. She told me no one would ever look for me. Chloe's eyes glistened. She said my car had been found abandoned near Rattlesnake Ledge. My chest tightened instantly. Rattlesnake Ledge, a steep hiking trail east of the city. Dangerous, perfect for staging an accident. She said eventually people would assume I was gone, Chloe whispered, and no one would ask questions anymore. She came every week, food, water, Chloe's voice cracked again. She said it was temporary, that once everything was settled legally, she would let me go. Neither Harold nor I believed that. Not for a second. Then Chloe looked up at me. Something new had appeared in her expression. Fear and anger. "Dad," she said quietly. It wasn't just Monica. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" She took a shaky breath. "Uncle Stephen." The words hit the room like thunder. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Stephen Barrett. My partner. My friend of 18 years. The man who had stood beside me at Jennifer's funeral. "No," I said immediately. "That's not possible." Chloe shook her head slowly. "I heard them talking," she said. "Through the camera. They thought I was asleep." Her voice hardened. "But I heard everything." She looked directly at me. He helped her plan it. The room seemed to tilt around me. Harold placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "Christopher," he said quietly, "we need to decide what happens next. And we need to decide now." I looked at Chloe, alive, but fragile, still carrying the shadow of everything she had endured. The weight of every decision I had ever made pressed down on me at once. Outside the window, the Seattle rain continued to fall. Harold rose slowly from his chair, his face flushed with urgency and disbelief. His usually calm demeanor had vanished, replaced by the sharp focus of a man who understood the gravity of what he had just heard. "Christopher," he said firmly, "we need to call the police. Right now." His voice carried the weight of certainty. "This is a criminal case, kidnapping, false imprisonment, and likely much more. Every second we hesitate gives Monica and Stephen another opportunity to cover their tracks." I shook my head slowly. "If we call the police right now," I said quietly, "they'll know immediately." Harold frowned. "What do you mean Monica will realize something's wrong the moment officers show up at Columbia Center?" I explained. "She'll know exactly what it means." I leaned forward, my voice tightening. "She'll destroy everything." Harold didn't interrupt. "That room," I continued, "the hidden staircase, the camera footage, every trace of what she's done." My hands clenched unconsciously. "By the time investigators get a warrant to search the building, there won't be anything left to find. Christopher and Stephen." I added, my tone hardening. Harold looked at me carefully. "He's the CFO of Vale Development," I said. "He has access to everything: financial records, company files, internal documentation. Every piece of information we've built over the last 18 years. I paused. "If he suspects we've discovered the truth, he'll erase everything before anyone can prove a thing." Harold opened his mouth to argue. Then he stopped. His eyes shifted toward the couch. Chloe sat there wrapped tightly in the thick blanket Linda had given her. She looked small, fragile. Her shoulders curled inward, her gaze distant and unfocused. 6 months in captivity had hollowed something out of her. The last thing she needed was to watch her rescue collapse because we acted too quickly. Harold sighed quietly. "So what do you want to do?" he asked. "I need time," I said. "Time to gather evidence. Time to understand exactly what Monica and Stephen have done and why." My voice steadied. "Then we go to the authorities with something undeniable, something they couldn't dismiss." Harold studied me for several long seconds. Finally, he nodded and walked toward his desk. He opened a drawer and pulled out a single business card. The card was simple but elegant, printed on thick, cream-colored stock. He handed it to me. "Sharon Mitchell, private investigator. Former FBI special agent, a phone number, an email address, nothing else." "Sharon spent 15 years with the Bureau working major fraud investigations," Harold explained. "She's meticulous, quiet, and she knows exactly how to build a case that stands up in court." He met my eyes. "If anyone can help you handle this the right way, it's her." I looked down at the card for a moment before meeting his gaze again. "Thank you." He nodded, though the concern in his expression remained. Just promise me something, he said. If this situation becomes dangerous, if Monica or Steven even suspect what you're doing, you call the police immediately. His voice sharpened. No hesitation. Understood, understood. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number printed on the card. The line rang 3 times before someone answered. Mitchell Investigations. The woman's voice was calm, controlled, and unmistakably professional. Ms. Mitchell, I said, my name is Christopher Vale. Harold Peterson gave me your contact information. A brief pause. I need help with a sensitive situation. Another moment of silence. Harold's a good man, she said at last. What kind of situation are we talking about? I glanced toward Chloe, then back toward Harold. It's complicated, I said. I'd prefer to explain in person. Another pause. Can you meet tonight? Yes. There's a cafe near Pike Place Market, she said. Corner of First and Pine. 8 o'clock. I'll be there. Good. Her voice hardened slightly. And Mr. Vale, yes, come alone. If this matter is as sensitive as you say, we don't need an audience. The line went dead. I lowered the phone slowly. I have to go home first, I said to Harold. If Monica suspects anything, if she realizes Chloe's gone, everything collapses. Linda appeared in the doorway at that moment, carrying a tray with a bowl of soup and crackers. She placed it gently on the coffee table in front of Chloe and looked at me carefully. Be careful, she said softly. I nodded. Chloe stays here. I looked at both of them. No one can know she's here. Not friends, not neighbors, no one. Harold nodded. Understood. He walked me to the door. As I stepped outside into the cool evening air, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Monica. My stomach tightened instantly. I answered. Hey. Hi, honey, Monica said warmly. Where are you? Her voice was light, almost playful. I tried calling you earlier, but you didn't answer. I was starting to worry. Sorry, I replied casually. I was stuck in back-to-back meetings all afternoon. You know how Fridays are. The lie rolled off my tongue far too easily. I just finished a budget review with Vincent Caldwell. We're trying to finalize projections for the 4th quarter. Oh, that sounds exhausting, she said with a soft laugh. That familiar laugh, once comforting. Now it made my skin crawl. Well, she continued, you should come home soon. I'm making your favorite. I felt my chest tighten. Rosemary chicken, she added cheerfully. With roasted potatoes. Sounds perfect, I said. I'll be home soon. I ended the call and sat silently in my car. My hands gripped the steering wheel. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. The drive back to our home in Broadmoor felt strangely unreal. I passed the same streets I had driven 1,000 times before. The same quiet neighborhoods. The same glowing windows. Everything looked exactly the same. Normal, ordinary. But nothing was normal anymore. Nothing would ever be normal again. I pulled into the driveway at 6:45. The house glowed warmly in the evening rain. Through the kitchen window, I could see Monica moving gracefully around the room, setting the dinner table. I took a slow breath. Then I stepped out of the car and walked inside. There you are. Monica greeted me with a bright smile and stepped forward to kiss me. Her hands rested warmly against my chest. She smelled like rosemary and red wine. How was your day? She asked. Long, I replied with a tired smile. Vincent's worried about the Tacoma project. He thinks we're pushing the budget too far. You'll figure it out, she said easily. You always do. She handed me a glass of red wine. Here. You look like you need this. I took the glass and sipped. It tasted like ash. We sat down at the table. Monica talked about her day client meetings, fabric samples, a design conference in Portland she wanted to attend next month. I nodded, asked questions, laughed at the right moments. All the while, my mind kept returning to Chloe's face. Pale, exhausted, Her voice echoed inside my head. She drugged me. She said no one would ever look for me. By 7:30, I pushed my plate aside. I almost forgot, I said. I have a meeting with Harold tonight. Monica looked up. We need to review some paperwork for the estate trust, I continued. Jennifer's anniversary is coming up. There are a few things we need to finalize. Monica's expression softened immediately. Oh, honey. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I know that's difficult for you. I squeezed back, smiled. I won't be long. She walked me to the door and kissed me goodbye. Drive safe, she said. Her lips felt warm, familiar. I got into my car and pulled out of the driveway. I didn't exhale until I turned the corner. 20 minutes later, I parked near Pike Place Market. The cafe Sharon mentioned was small and quiet, tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop. Through the window, I spotted her immediately. Mid-40s. Dark hair pulled back neatly. Sharp, observant eyes scanning the room. Sharon Mitchell. I walked inside. She looked up. Our eyes met. I crossed the cafe and sat down across from her. Mr. Vale, she asked calmly. Yes, she folded her hands on the table. Tell me everything. And I did. I told Sharon everything. I started with the pen the Mont Blanc engraved with Chloe's name. I explained how I had found it sitting on Monica's desk, how picking it up had triggered the hidden mechanism behind the bookshelf. I described the concealed staircase that led downward into that underground space, the concrete room, the soundproof walls, the narrow bed, the blinking camera, the place where my daughter had been kept for 6 months. I told her about Monica's weekly visits, the food deliveries, the quiet, calculated cruelty of keeping Chloe alive but hidden. Then I explained the staged accident at Rattlesnake Ledge. And finally, Stephen Barrett, my partner, my friend. The man Chloe said had helped plan the entire thing. Through all of it, Sharon never interrupted. She sat across from me with a small leather notebook open on the table. Her pen moved steadily across the page, quick and precise. Years of investigative work had clearly trained her to listen without reacting. Her face remained calm, neutral, the expression of someone who had spent a career hearing terrible things and refusing to flinch. When I finally finished, the cafe had grown quiet around us. Sharon closed the notebook gently and set her pen beside it. Then she looked at me. Mr. Vale, she said calmly, I need to ask you a few questions. Her tone softened slightly. They may feel intrusive, but they're necessary. I nodded immediately. Ask whatever you need. She leaned back slightly in her chair. When did you marry Monica? June 2021, I said. Almost 4 years ago. And when did you first meet her? May of 2020, I replied. At a fundraiser for the Seattle Arts Foundation. She was representing an interior design firm, Cross and Associates. I paused for a moment. We talked about architecture, design philosophy. She understood the way buildings function, the way spaces influence people. I exhaled slowly. She was charming, intelligent. She seemed to understand my work in a way most people don't. Sharon wrote something in her notebook. How long after meeting her did your relationship become serious? A few months, I said. We dated through the summer. I rubbed my hands together unconsciously. I proposed in December. My voice faltered slightly. I thought I was ready to move forward. Jennifer had been gone for over a year. The memory still hurt. Chloe encouraged me, I continued quietly. She said her mother wouldn't want me to spend the rest of my life alone. Sharon's pen moved again. What do you know about Monica's life before you met her? I opened my mouth to answer, then stopped. For a moment, the silence between us stretched uncomfortably. What did I actually know? She grew up in California, I said slowly. San Diego, I think. She studied interior design somewhere in the Southwest. I hesitated again. She moved to Seattle in 2019 to start her own design firm. Sharon's eyes lifted briefly from her notebook. Did you ever meet her family? No, I said. She told me her parents had passed away. Any siblings, she said she didn't have any. Friends from before she moved here. I frowned. A few acquaintances, I said, but no close friends. She said she'd been focused on building her business. Sharon leaned forward slightly. Mr. Vale, did you ever visit her office? The office for Cross and Associates. My stomach tightened. No. I shook my head. She usually met clients at their homes or offices. She told me it created a more personal design process. Sharon wrote another line in her notebook. Did she have employees, business partners, contractors she worked with, supposedly? I said. But I never met them. Sharon closed her notebook slowly. Then she looked at me with something that almost resembled sympathy. Mr. Vale, she said carefully, I don't think you actually know very much about your wife. The words hit like a blow, because she was right. I had married a woman whose past I could barely describe. I had welcomed her into my home, introduced her to my daughter, given her access to every part of my life, and yet I couldn't name a single verifiable fact about where she came from. How had I missed something so obvious? Sharon straightened slightly. Here's what we're going to do. Her voice carried the calm authority of someone used to leading investigations. First, Chloe stays exactly where she is. Harold's house is secure, and no one outside that house needs to know she's there. She met my eyes. If Monica or Stephen discover she's free, they'll disappear before we have the chance to build a case. I nodded. Second, Sharon continued, you go home tonight and behave exactly as you always do. She emphasized each word. Nothing changes. You go to work. You have dinner with Monica. You continue your routine. Her gaze sharpened slightly. Can you do that? Yes, I said. Third, I'll begin a full background investigation. Monica Cross first, then Stephen Barrett. She tapped her notebook. I'll examine financial records, communication history, corporate filings, anything that helps us understand what they've been planning. I hesitated. What about the room under Monica's office? The evidence is there. Sharon shook her head. We can't touch it yet. Not until we understand the full situation. If we move too quickly, we risk alerting them. She paused. But once we know what we're dealing with, we'll document everything in a way that stands up in court. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small black case. She opened it on the table. Inside were several ordinary-looking objects. Pens, a phone charger, a small wall clock. These are surveillance devices, she explained. Hidden cameras, audio recorders. She pointed to each one. I'll need you to place them in strategic locations. Your home, possibly your office. Anywhere Monica or Stephen might speak freely. I stared at the objects. The thought of secretly recording my own wife felt wrong, sickening. But then I remembered Chloe's hollow face, the concrete room, the camera watching her. And suddenly the choice became simple. I'll do it. Sharon nodded. Then she pulled out her laptop and opened it. Let's start with the basics. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. You said Monica's firm is called Cross and Associates, yes. A sleek website appeared on the screen. Cross and Associates interior design. Elegant fonts. Beautiful photographs. Luxury living spaces designed with sophistication. Client testimonials. High-end project portfolios. It looked completely legitimate. Convincing, right? Sharon said. I nodded slowly. Then she opened another window. This is the domain registration. She pointed at the screen. The website was created on March 15, 2020. My chest tightened. That's 2 months before you met Monica. She opened another tab. No registered business address. The phone number routes to a generic voicemail. She clicked one of the glowing testimonials. The names don't match anyone in Seattle. Another window appeared. I ran reverse image searches on the portfolio photos. She paused. Half of them are stock images from design magazines. I stared at the screen. Everything felt unreal. Mr. Vale, Sharon said quietly. I don't believe your wife is an interior designer. I don't believe Cross and Associates ever existed. Her voice lowered. This website was built to support a carefully constructed identity. The cafe suddenly felt suffocating. The air felt too warm, too thin. Then who is she? I whispered. Sharon's expression darkened. That she said is exactly what we're going to find out. She closed the laptop and slid the surveillance case toward me. Go home. Act normal. Place these where they won't be discovered. Her eyes held mine. And whatever you do, don't let Monica see that you know. I nodded slowly. Then I left the cafe. Outside, the streets of Seattle glistened under the rain. The neon lights of Pike Place Market reflected across the wet pavement. I sat in my car for a long time. My mind replayed one question again and again. Who had I married? Who was the woman sharing my home? Sleeping in my bed, living inside the life Jennifer and I had built together, I didn't know. And for the first time since finding Chloe in that hidden room, I was truly afraid. I started the engine and drove home through the rain. Monica was waiting. Saturday morning began like any other. From the bedroom, I could hear Monica in the kitchen moving through the quiet rituals of our weekend routine. The familiar hum of the coffee grinder filled the house, followed by the steady rush of water from the faucet. A moment later came the soft clink of ceramic mugs touching the countertop. For a few seconds I lay still listening. Through the bedroom doorway, I caught glimpses of her moving around the kitchen, smooth, effortless movements, the kind that came from repeating the same routine 1,000 times. Everything about it looked ordinary, comforting even. A few minutes later, she appeared in the doorway holding 2 steaming mugs. Her hair was pulled back into a loose ponytail, and she wore one of my old work shirts over her pajama shorts. The sleeves hung loosely around her wrists. She looked warm, sleepy, perfectly domestic. Good morning, handsome, she said softly. She crossed the room and handed me one of the mugs. How'd you sleep? Fine, I said. The lie came easily. In reality, I had barely slept at all. She leaned forward and kissed my forehead before sitting beside me on the edge of the bed. I was thinking, she said lightly, we should drive out to Snoqualmie Falls today. Her tone was relaxed, casual. It's supposed to be beautiful this time of year. We haven't done anything like that in forever. I wrapped both hands around the mug she'd given me. The coffee smelled exactly the way it always did, rich, dark, familiar. The same blend we had been drinking for years. And suddenly something shifted in my mind. 4 months. For the past 4 months, things had been off. At first, the changes had been small. I forgot where I left my car keys. I blanked on the name of a contractor I had worked with for nearly a decade. I missed appointments I had personally scheduled. Conversations would slip away halfway through. I had blamed it on stress, on grief, on the relentless pressure of running Vale Development while Chloe was missing and Stephen had been unavailable for several projects. But now a different possibility crept into my thoughts. What if it wasn't stress? What if it was the coffee? Across from me, Monica took a slow sip from her own mug. She looked perfectly relaxed, completely unaware of the storm building inside my head. She didn't know I had found the hidden room. She didn't know Chloe was safe. She didn't know Sharon Mitchell was investigating her past. That sounds nice, I said carefully. Let me take a quick shower first. Of course, she replied with a smile. Take your time. She kissed my forehead again and walked out of the room. The moment she disappeared down the hallway, I stood. Inside the closet on the top shelf was an old insulated thermos I used to take on hiking trips years ago. I grabbed it and carried it into the bathroom. Then I locked the door. I poured the entire mug of coffee into the thermos, every drop. After sealing it tightly, I turned on the shower to mask any remaining noise. 15 minutes later, I walked back into the bedroom. The empty mug sat on the nightstand. Monica was downstairs making breakfast. The rest of the day passed quietly, but something changed. By mid-afternoon, I felt clearer. It was subtle at first. My thoughts felt sharper. focused. It was as if a fog I hadn't even noticed before had begun to lift. I followed conversations easily. Details came back to me, names, numbers, project figures that would have slipped through my mind just the day before. And then another memory surfaced. The vitamins. For the past 4 months, Monica had handed me a small white pill every morning at breakfast. "You need to take better care of yourself," she had said the first time. "These are multivitamins, extra B complex. They'll help with your energy." I had taken them without hesitation, without questioning anything. Now I walked into the bathroom and opened the medicine cabinet. The bottle sat exactly where it always did. Plain. White. The label read, "Daily Wellness Complex. Take 1 tablet daily with food." No brand name, no pharmacy label, just a simple printed sticker. I shook 1 tablet into my palm. Then I wrapped it carefully in tissue and slipped it into my pocket. That evening, we sat on the couch together, watching a movie neither of us was truly paying attention to. Halfway through, Monica turned toward me with an expression of concern. "Christopher," she said softly, "I've been worried about you." Her hand rested gently on my knee. "You've been so forgetful lately." She hesitated. "Maybe you should see Dr. Mitchell again." My stomach tightened. Dr. Howard Mitchell. Monica had introduced me to him 2 months earlier. After I casually mentioned having trouble concentrating, she insisted I see a specialist. "He's wonderful," she had said. "He'll know exactly what to do." Dr. Mitchell had an office in Bellevue. I had visited him twice. He was calm, professional, reassuring. He asked about my sleep, my stress levels. He ran cognitive tests. Then he gave me a diagnosis. Early signs of cognitive decline, he had said carefully, possibly the beginning of something more serious. He prescribed a medication, donepezil. "It's commonly used for memory issues," he explained. "It should help stabilize things." I had been taking it ever since. Now sitting beside Monica with her hand resting on my knee, a cold wave of suspicion spread through my chest. "I'll call him Monday," I said. Monica smiled warmly. "Good. I just want you to be okay." Later that night, after she went upstairs to bed, I stayed in the living room. I pulled out my phone. Then I opened a search engine and typed Dr. Howard Mitchell, Seattle, Neurology. Nothing appeared. I tried again. Dr. Howard Mitchell, Bellevue. Still nothing. A cold sensation crept up my spine. I opened the Washington State Medical Board database, typed his name, selected neurology. The results loaded. No records, no license, no physician named Howard Mitchell practicing in Washington State. My hands began to shake. Slowly, I pulled out the business card he had given me. Heavy cardstock, embossed lettering. Dr. Howard Mitchell, neurology specialist, a phone number, an email. I dialed the number. The phone rang twice. Then it clicked to voicemail. "Thank you for calling," an automated voice said. "Please leave a message with your name and number, and someone will return your call during business hours." No clinic name. No hospital. Just a generic answering system. I hung up. Then immediately dialed Sharon Mitchell. She answered on the second ring. "Mr. Vale, I think my wife has been drugging me." There was a pause. Then Sharon's voice returned calm but sharp. "Tell me everything." I explained about the coffee, the vitamins, the memory problems that had started 4 months earlier. I told her about Dr. Mitchell, the diagnosis, the prescription, and the fact that he appeared nowhere in any official record. For a moment, Sharon said nothing. Then she spoke. Her voice was controlled, focused. "I need you to bring me that coffee sample," she said, "and one of those pills, first thing tomorrow morning. Do not drink anything Monica gives you. Do not take any more of those vitamins." Her voice hardened. "And whatever you do, don't let her know you're suspicious." "I won't." "Good," she said. "We're going to find out exactly what she's been giving you." The line went quiet. I ended the call and sat alone in the dark living room. The house felt different now. Colder. Stranger. I stared into the darkness for a long time. Monica hadn't just imprisoned my daughter. She had been poisoning me. Sharon called me early Monday morning, while I was sitting in my office pretending to focus on a stack of quarterly budget reports. "Christopher," she said, without greeting, "we need to meet, right now." There was something different in her voice, tighter than usual, edged with urgency. 20 minutes later, I was standing inside her office near Pike Place Market. The space was small, but organized with military precision. A metal desk sat against the far wall, flanked by filing cabinets. One entire wall was covered in corkboard, layered with photographs, notes, and pinned documents connected by red string. Several folders lay open across the desk as if she had been working all night. Sharon gestured toward the chair opposite her desk. "You should sit down," she said. Her eyes were red around the edges. She looked exhausted. "I had the coffee and the pill analyzed by a lab I trust," she continued. "The results came back this morning." She slid a printed report across the desk toward me. I looked down at the page. It was filled with chemical names, numbers, and abbreviations that might as well have been written in another language. "The coffee contained two substances," Sharon said, "donepezil and lorazepam." I looked up at her. "In unusually high doses." "What exactly are those?" I asked. "Donepezil is a medication used to treat Alzheimer's disease," she explained. "It's designed to help improve memory and cognitive function in people who already suffer from neurological decline." She tapped the paper lightly. "But in someone healthy, especially when it's combined with lorazepam, which is a sedative, it can have the opposite effect, such as confusion, disorientation, memory loss, difficulty concentrating." My stomach twisted. It essentially mimics the symptoms of serious cognitive impairment. The implications settled over me like ice. "And the pill?" I asked quietly. Sharon slid another report across the desk. "The tablet you brought me, the one Monica told you was a vitamin she tapped the lab analysis. It's zolpidem. That's a sleep medication," I said. "Yes," she confirmed. "A prescription sedative. The lab also detected a secondary compound, an antidepressant known to cause fatigue and mental fog." I stared at the report. "So she was slowly destroying your cognitive function," Sharon finished. Her tone was calm, but I could see anger simmering beneath the surface. "If you had continued taking these drugs regularly within a few months, you would have displayed severe symptoms of cognitive decline." I swallowed hard. "Enough that someone could argue you were mentally unfit to manage your business or your finances." The room felt suddenly smaller. "There's more," Sharon said. She reached for a manila folder from the stack on her desk and opened it. Inside was a photograph of the coffee mug I had given her. "I dusted the cup for fingerprints," she explained. "Then I ran the prints through a database I have access to." She paused. "Monica Cross doesn't exist in any official record prior to 2020. No birth certificate, no driver's license, no tax history. Nothing." My chest tightened. "But the fingerprints do match someone else." She turned her laptop toward me. On the screen was a driver's license photograph issued in Nevada. The woman in the image was younger. Her hair was darker, cut in a different style, but there was no mistaking the face. "Monica. Victoria Brooks," Sharon said. "She lived in Las Vegas from 2012 to 2015. Sharon opened another file. In 2013, she married a man named James Brooks, 62 years old, a retired real estate investor. She slid a photograph across the desk. The man in the image looked cheerful, relaxed. Someone who had trusted the woman standing beside him. James Brooks died suddenly in June of 2015, Sharon continued. Official cause of death: stroke. My stomach turned. Victoria inherited approximately $720,000. The police opened a brief investigation after family members raised concerns. She shrugged slightly, but there was no evidence of foul play. The case was closed. Before I could respond, Sharon pulled out another document. The same fingerprints match another identity. She turned the laptop toward me again. A second driver's license photo appeared on the screen. Different state, different name, same face. Vivian Cross Sharon said, Phoenix, Arizona. Between 2016 and 2019, she tapped the screen. In early 2017, she married Patrick Morrison, 58 years old, owner of a successful construction company. I felt my chest tighten as Sharon continued. Patrick Morrison died in August of 2019. How he fell down the stairs in their home. She paused. The medical examiner ruled the death accidental. My mouth felt dry. Vivian inherited his estate, Sharon said quietly. Approximately $1.1 million. The silence in the room grew heavy. Sharon folded her hands together and looked directly at me. Christopher, your wife is a professional. Her voice was calm. In law enforcement, people like her are known as black widows. They target wealthy or financially stable men. They build relationships, get married, and eventually engineer accidents or medical emergencies. And then they inherit everything. She placed 3 photographs side by side on the desk. James Brooks, Patrick Morrison, and a professional photo of me taken for the Vale Development website. You, she said softly, are husband number 3. The words hit like a punch to the chest. I stared at the photos. 3 men who had trusted the same woman. 2 of them already dead. I've already filed petitions to exhume the bodies of James Brooks and Patrick Morrison. Sharon continued, It will take a few weeks for the court to approve the orders, but I'm confident we'll find evidence of poisoning. Arsenic, she said thoughtfully. Or something even more sophisticated, compounds designed to mimic natural medical conditions. I couldn't look away from the photographs. Those men had loved her, just like I had. How did she find me? I asked hoarsely. Sharon shook her head. I don't know yet, but I will. She closed the folders and leaned back slightly. The good news is you're still alive. You discovered the truth before she could finish whatever plan she had in motion. She paused. The bad news is that Chloe's disappearance from that room will eventually alert her that something has gone wrong. We have to move carefully. I nodded slowly. There's one more thing. Sharon opened another file on her laptop. A wire transfer from Stephen Barrett's personal account. $50,000. Sent to an account registered under the name Victoria Brooks. My chest tightened. When September of last year, 4 months before Chloe disappeared. The realization hit like a wave. Stephen was paying her. It appears that way, Sharon said, but the question is why? What does he gain from helping her that she said is exactly what we're going to uncover? I stood slowly, my legs unsteady. The room felt smaller than before, the walls closer. Go home, Sharon said gently. Act normal. Don't let Monica suspect anything. I'll continue digging. We'll decide our next move soon. I nodded and left her office. Outside, the rain-soaked streets of Seattle reflected the gray morning sky. I walked to my car and sat behind the steering wheel for several minutes. Monica Cross, Victoria Brooks, Vivian Cross. 3 names, 3 husbands, 2 already dead. I had never truly known the woman I married. I had invited a predator into my home, a woman who had smiled across the breakfast table while quietly poisoning my coffee. A woman who had locked my daughter inside a concrete prison. And I had loved her. My hands tightened around the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I still didn't know who my wife really was, but I was going to find out. I needed to understand why Stephen had betrayed me. Not just for the sake of the investigation, not just to build a case I needed to know. We'd worked together for 18 years. He'd been at my wedding. He'd held Chloe when she was born. He'd stood beside me at Jennifer's memorial service. What had I done to make him hate me enough to help a woman imprison my daughter? I went down to the garage late that night after Monica had gone to bed. The space was cluttered with old storage boxes, things I'd never bothered to sort through, relics from the early days of Vale Development. I pulled down a box labeled 2009 Projects and opened it. Inside were folders, blueprints, contracts. I dug through them until I found what I was looking for. Millennium Tower, the project that had put Vale Development on the map. A 20-story mixed-use building in downtown Seattle, residential commercial, with a public plaza that won 3 design awards. It was the job that had established our reputation, that had opened doors we'd only dreamed of before. I opened the folder and spread the blueprints across the garage floor. They were covered in handwriting. Notes in the margins, calculations, sketches of alternative structural approaches. Stephen's handwriting. I stared at the pages, and slowly, sickeningly, a memory surfaced. March 2009. Stephen had come to my office with a design he'd been working on for months. It was brilliant, bold, innovative, with a structural system that balanced aesthetics and engineering in a way I'd never seen before. He'd been so excited, talking a mile a minute, showing me every detail. This could be our breakthrough, Christopher. This could change everything. I'd told him it was incredible. I'd told him we'd present it together. But then I'd looked at the design more carefully, and I'd seen ways to refine it, small adjustments to the facade, changes to the floor plan that would make it more marketable. I'd spent a week reworking his concept, making it my own, and when the time came to present to the client, I'd gone alone. I found the presentation cover sheet at the bottom of the stack. In my own handwriting, dated March 2009, Millennium Tower, presented by J. Vale Development Corporation. Stephen's name was nowhere on it. I closed my eyes, feeling sick. I kept digging through the box and found a stack of old printed emails clipped together with a rusted binder clip. I flipped through them. The first was from Stephen, dated April 2009. Christopher, you took my design. You removed my name like I never existed. I gave you that project because I thought we were partners, because I trusted you. I won't forget this. Stephen. My reply was below it. I winced as I read my own words. Stephen, you're overreacting. I refined it significantly. The client loved my version. That's how business works. Move on. J. And then, at the bottom, one final message from Stephen. You're right. I'll move on. But someday, Christopher, you'll understand what you took from me. S. I sat back on the cold concrete floor, the emails trembling in my hands. 15 years. He'd waited 15 years. I thought back to that time, 2009, 2010. Stephen had stayed with the company. He'd kept working, kept smiling, kept showing up to meetings and client dinners. I'd assumed he'd gotten over it. I'd assumed we'd moved past it. But he hadn't. He'd been waiting. A horrible thought crept into my mind. I pulled out my phone and called Harold. He answered on the third ring, his voice groggy. Christopher, it's almost midnight. What's wrong? Harold, I need to ask you something about Jennifer. A pause. All right. Stephen, did he ever have feelings for her? The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Harold, Christopher. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but given everything that's happening, he sighed. Stephen proposed to Jennifer in 2011, before you two started seeing each other. The world tilted. What? He asked her to marry him. She told me about it because she wasn't sure how to handle it. She cared about him, but not that way. She said there was something cold about him, something that made her uncomfortable. What did she say to him? She said no. She told him she valued their professional relationship, but didn't see him romantically. A few months later, she started dating you. I couldn't breathe. She chose you, Christopher. She always chose you. I ended the call and sat in the dark garage surrounded by blueprints and ghosts. Stephen had brought me a brilliant design, the work of months, maybe years, and I'd stolen it. I'd erased his name and claimed it as my own. I'd built my reputation on his idea. And then I'd married the woman he loved. Jennifer had chosen me over him. She'd rejected him and chosen me. For 15 years, Stephen had watched me build a company on his stolen work. He'd watched me marry Jennifer Ray's Chloe live the life he'd wanted for himself. And when Jennifer passed in 2019, he'd seen an opportunity. Monica Victoria Vivian, whatever her real name was, must have found him somehow. Or maybe he'd found her. Either way, they'd made a deal. She would seduce me, marry me, and slowly destroy me. She'd imprison Chloe, poison my mind, take everything I had. And Stephen would finally get his revenge. Not just for the stolen design, not just for Jennifer, for everything. I looked down at the blueprints spread across the floor, Stephen's handwriting covering every page, his genius reduced to margins and footnotes, while my name sat in bold letters at the top. Someday, you'll understand what you took from me. I understood now. I'd taken his career, his recognition, his future, and the woman he loved. No wonder he wanted to destroy me. I sat alone in the garage, surrounded by the evidence of my own arrogance. And for the first time, I understood the true depth of Stephen Barrett's hatred. It wasn't just revenge. It was justice. At least that's what he believed. Still with me, comment yes if you're still here listening to the story. Just a quick note, what's coming next includes dramatized elements for storytelling purposes. If that's not your preference, you can close the video now. But if you want to see what happens when that hidden door finally opens and justice steps inside, don't leave yet. Sharon called me early Wednesday morning. "Christopher," she said. Without preamble, I found something. Her voice was steady, but there was a tension beneath it I had learned to recognize. "It's worse than we thought." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "Where are you?" I asked. "There's a diner in Redmond," she replied. "Corner of Leary Way and 85th. A pause. "Can you meet me there in an hour? I'll be there." I told Monica I needed to inspect a construction site in Redmond that morning. The lie came so easily now. It barely felt like deception anymore. She kissed me goodbye in the kitchen and reminded me not to forget the dry cleaning on my way home. Normal. Everything about her seemed normal. That was the most terrifying part. I drove north toward Redmond in silence, my thoughts racing faster than the traffic around me. The diner Sharon had chosen was small and unremarkable, wedged between a bank and a hardware store. A neon sign flickered above the window, and the smell of coffee and fried bacon drifted through the air when I stepped inside. Sharon was already there. She sat in a booth near the back of the restaurant, a laptop open in front of her, and a stack of folders spread across the table. When I slid into the seat across from her, she didn't waste time. "I traced Dr. Howard Mitchell," she said, pushing a document toward me. "His medical license number is fake." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "I ran it through the Washington State Medical Board database," she said. "No record. I checked Oregon, California, Idaho, every state in the region." She shook her head. "The number doesn't exist." I stared down at the printed certificate in front of me. At first glance, it looked legitimate, official, seal, state insignia, Mitchell's name printed clearly across the top, but the license number was meaningless, the address he listed for his clinic. Sharon continued. "It's a UPS store in Bellevue." My stomach tightened. "A mailbox rental." "There is no clinic." There never was. The realization hit like a blow to the chest. "I'm still working on identifying who he really is," she said. But while I was digging, I found something else. She turned her laptop toward me. "This is a reservation confirmation." The screen displayed a document from a facility called Emerald Heights Memory Care in Redmond. I read the text slowly. Patient name, Christopher Vale. Reservation date, July 18th, 2024. Deposit paid $45,000, monthly rate $15,000, facility contact, Patricia Henderson. Director, July, 3 months ago. 3 months ago, Monica and the fake doctor had already arranged to have me committed. "This was the plan," Sharon said calmly. "They drug you slowly over several months. You become forgetful, confused, disoriented." She tapped the laptop. "Dr. Mitchell, whoever he really is, documents the decline." She pulled another document from her stack. "Then Monica petitions the court for conservatorship." I looked up. A conservatorship, I asked. It's a legal process, Sharon explained. If the court believes you can no longer manage your own affairs, it appoints someone else to control them. She held my gaze. Usually a spouse. With Mitchell's reports confirming cognitive decline, the judge would almost certainly approve it. My chest tightened. And once she has conservatorship, Sharon continued, she moves you into Emerald Heights, a locked memory care facility. You're isolated. Your finances are under her control. She can transfer assets, modify legal documents, anything she wants, and no one questions it because legally you're incompetent. And then what I asked quietly. Sharon didn't hesitate. A year, maybe 2. Her voice remained calm. Then you die. Officially from complications related to Alzheimer's. She folded her hands on the table. Patients with severe cognitive decline often deteriorate quickly after institutionalization. With the drugs she's been giving you, she could easily accelerate the process. My lungs felt tight. Chloe is still legally missing. Sharon continued. Once you're gone, Monica waits the required period, usually 7 years, and has Chloe declared legally deceased. No witnesses, no heirs. She inherits everything. She slid another paper across the table. It was an insurance policy. Life insurance coverage, $10 million insured. Christopher Vale, beneficiary, Monica Cross, policy date. August 2023. My signature appeared at the bottom, but I had never seen the document before. I had never signed it. She forged it, Sharon said quietly. I had a handwriting analyst examine it. It's close to your signature, but it isn't actually yours. She must have practiced. I stared at the forged name. My own identity written by someone else's hand. Your estate is currently valued at approximately $52 million, Sharon continued. The insurance policy adds another 10. Her voice remained steady. If everything had gone according to plan, Monica Cross, Victoria Brooks, whatever her real name is, would have walked away with roughly $62 million. The number felt unreal. $62 million. And Steve and I asked. Sharon opened another file, a bank transfer record. She turned the laptop toward me again. Stephen Barrett wired $50,000 to an account registered under the name Victoria Brooks last September. Initial payment. She pointed to a column of numbers, based on the financial trail I've traced. Stephen's share of the plan was 30%. My chest tightened. 30% of $62 million, approximately $18 million, Sharon said. For him. The rest, for her. I leaned back slowly in the booth. My mind struggled to absorb the scale of what she was telling me. This wasn't just revenge. This wasn't Stephen lashing out for something I had done 15 years ago. This was calculated, professional, a carefully designed system meant to erase me completely. My freedom, my reputation, my life. Sharon opened one final folder. There's something else you should see. She showed me a series of text messages recovered from a phone registered to Stephen Barrett. Monica, how long until he's ready for transfer, Stephen? Another month. Mitchell says cognitive function is declining on schedule. Monica, good. Henderson at Emerald Heights is asking about timeline. Stephen, tell her November. We'll have conservatorship by then. Monica and the girl Stephen still contained. No issues. My stomach turned. They were discussing you like a business project, Sharon said quietly. Like Chloe was simply a problem to manage. I stared at the messages. The cold, clinical language. The way they had planned every step. Sharon closed the laptop slowly and looked at me across the table. Her expression had grown serious. Christopher, she said, we need to involve the FBI. This has moved far beyond what a private investigator can handle. Friday morning, I walked into the FBI field office in downtown Seattle. The building was all concrete and glass, anonymous and imposing. Sharon was waiting for me in the lobby. She'd arranged everything, the meeting, the files, the evidence we'd gathered over the past 2 weeks. We took an elevator to the 8th floor and were escorted into a conference room. A woman in her late 30s was waiting, standing beside a table covered with folders and a laptop. She had dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, sharp eyes that assessed me the moment I walked in, and the kind of calm authority that came from years of federal work. "Mr. Vale, I'm Special Agent Michelle Barnes, Commercial Crimes Division." She shook my hand firmly. "Please sit." Sharon and I sat across from her. Harold Peterson arrived a few minutes later, carrying his own briefcase full of legal documents. Agent Barnes didn't waste time. "Mr. Vale, Sharon's briefed me on your situation. I've reviewed the evidence. The fingerprint matches the fake company, the poisoning the reservation at Emerald Heights. What you're dealing with is serious, and you're not the first." I looked at her. "What do you mean?" She opened a file and turned it toward me. Inside were photographs of Monica, different hair, different names, but the same face. Monica Cross, also known as Victoria Brooks, and Vivian Cross has been on our watch list for 18 months. We suspected her involvement in the sudden passing of James Brooks in Nevada and Patrick Morrison in Arizona, but we couldn't prove it. Both cases were ruled natural causes, and by the time we started looking deeper, she'd already moved on. My stomach turned. "Your case gives us leverage," Agent Barnes continued. "For the first time, we have a living victim, documented evidence of drugging, financial fraud, kidnapping. We have a chance to stop her before she finishes what she started." "What do you need from me?" I asked. "We need to catch her in the act. Confessing, planning, discussing the conspiracy with Stephen Barrett. We need recordings that will hold up in court." She laid out the plan. "You continue pretending to decline. Your memory gets worse, your confusion increases. You agree when Monica suggests moving into Emerald Heights. We'll equip you with a concealed recording device, something she won't detect. You wear it during conversations with her and Stephen. At the critical moment when you're about to sign conservatorship papers or admission documents, they'll feel safe. That's when people talk. That's when they reveal their plans. And then," I asked. "Then we move in. With recorded confessions, the forged insurance policy, the poisoning evidence, the fake doctor, the kidnapping, we'll have enough to arrest both of them and make charges stick." Harold leaned forward. "There's something else you need to understand, Christopher, about Jennifer's will." I turned to him. "Jennifer set up her estate very carefully. She loved you, but she also wanted to protect Chloe. If Chloe were to pass away before turning 25 without having children of her own, the estate doesn't automatically transfer to you." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "It goes into a protected trust. You can manage it, draw income from it, but you can't sell the core assets or transfer them to anyone else, including a spouse. It was Jennifer's way of making sure the company and the property stayed in the family." "But Homke," Harold continued, his voice grim, "if you were placed under conservatorship due to mental incompetence, the conservator, in this case Monica, could petition the court to modify the trust. She could argue that your condition requires liquidating assets for your care. Once the court approves, the protections Jennifer built would be gone." I felt sick. "Monica researched this," Harold said. "She knew about the clause. She knew she couldn't just inherit if Chloe was gone. She had to destroy your mind, first take legal control, and then dismantle the protections piece by piece." Agent Barnes nodded. "This woman is meticulous. She's done this before and she's good at it. We only get one chance. If she suspects anything, if she thinks you're onto her, she'll disappear. New name, new state, new target, and we'll lose her." I looked at the three of them, Sharon, Harold, Agent Barnes. They were asking me to walk back into my house, smile at the woman who'd poisoned me and imprisoned my daughter, and pretend my mind was crumbling. "I'll do it," I said. "Whatever it takes." Agent Barnes handed me a small device that looked like a pen. "This is a recording pen. Keep it in your shirt pocket. It'll pick up everything within 15 feet. We'll monitor remotely." Over the next few weeks, I gave the performance of my life. I forgot Monica's name and called her Jennifer. I asked her the same question 3 times in an hour. I left the stove on. I couldn't remember where I'd parked the car. I lost track of conversations mid-sentence. Monica's face showed concern, but I saw something else in her eyes, a flicker of satisfaction quickly hidden. By late November, she was making calls. Monday, November 25th. Dr. Mitchell came to the house. He wasn't the real Alan Brennan yet. Sharon was still tracking that lead, but whoever he was, he played his role perfectly. He examined me, shone a light in my eyes, asked me to remember 3 words and repeat them 5 minutes later. I failed. He sat down across from Monica in our living room, his expression grave. "Mrs. Vale, your husband's cognitive decline has accelerated significantly. He needs professional care. Soon." Monica nodded, her face a mask of sorrow. "I was afraid of that. I recommend we move forward with the admission to Emerald Heights. The sooner the better." That afternoon, Monica made the call. I heard her from the kitchen, her voice calm and efficient. "Yes, this is Monica Vale. We'd like to schedule my husband's admission." "Yes, Friday works. November 29th. Thank you." She came back into the room and took my hand. "It's going to be okay, sweetheart. They're going to take good care of you." I nodded, my eyes unfocused. The trap was set. 4 days until Friday. 4 days to pretend my mind was slipping away, while every word, every confession was recorded. 4 days until Monica Cross finally made the mistake that would end her. Friday, November 29th. The day I was supposed to be admitted to Emerald Heights. That morning began like any other, quiet, almost ordinary. Monica helped me into my coat in the front hallway, her hands gentle as she straightened the collar. But before we left, she mentioned one small detour. "Stephen needs you to stop by the office first," she said lightly. "There are a few documents he wants you to sign." Her voice was warm, reassuring. "Just a temporary transfer of CEO authority. It's only to protect the company while you're getting treatment." I nodded slowly, lowering my eyes the way I had practiced. "Okay," I murmured. "If you think that's best." Inside my shirt pocket, the recording pen rested against my chest. I could feel its weight with every breath I took. Every word spoken in the next hour would be captured. We drove to Columbia Center without speaking. Rain streaked the windshield, blurring the skyline of Seattle beyond the glass. Monica kept glancing at me from the driver's seat, her expression carefully composed, part concern, part quiet sadness. I stared out the window, letting my gaze drift unfocused. A man already losing his grip on reality. That was the role I needed to play. The 28th floor was unusually quiet when we arrived. Most of the staff had been given the day off, under the pretense of corporate restructuring meetings. Monica guided me down the hallway, her hand resting gently on my elbow. Inside the conference room, 4 people were waiting. Stephen Barrett sat at the far end of the long glass table. A neat stack of documents rested in front of him. Beside him sat Dr. Mitchell, dressed in a dark tailored suit, his leather portfolio open beside him. Inside were what I assumed were the fabricated medical reports describing my supposed mental decline. Harold Peterson sat off to one side, his shoulders tense, his expression guarded. Across from him was Vincent Caldwell, one of Vale Development's earliest investors, a man who had trusted me with his money decades earlier. Stephen looked up and smiled. "Christopher," he said warmly. "Good to see you." He gestured toward the chair at the head of the table. "Please, sit down." I lowered myself slowly into the seat, letting my movements appear hesitant and uncertain. Monica took the chair beside me. Her hand rested lightly on my arm, a supportive gesture for the room to see. Stephen slid a folder across the table toward me. "Christopher." He began smoothly, Given your current health situation, I'm proposing a temporary transfer of CEO responsibilities. His tone was calm, reasonable. It's purely precautionary. Something to ensure stability for the company while you focus on your treatment. Monica nodded sympathetically. It's the right decision, sweetheart, she said softly. Right now, your health needs to come first. I lowered my gaze to the papers, blinking slowly, as if struggling to process the words. Before I could respond, Vincent Caldwell cleared his throat. Christopher, he said quietly, I need to say something. The room went still. Stephen's eyes narrowed slightly. Vincent glanced briefly at him before looking back at me. Stephen approached me last month, Vincent said. He offered to buy my 15% stake in Vale Development. Stephen shifted in his chair. Vincent? This really isn't. Vincent ignored him. He offered double the market value. The tension in the room thickened. I declined, Vincent continued. But it made me start thinking. He leaned forward slightly. If Stephen becomes CEO while you're incapacitated, and he acquires my shares, that gives him 70% control of the company. His eyes searched my face. Christopher, I've known you 20 years. He paused. Something about this situation doesn't feel right. The silence that followed felt suffocating. I looked slowly from Vincent to Stephen, then to Monica. My expression remained blank, confused. The expression of a man who couldn't quite follow the conversation. It's okay, Vincent, I said slowly. My voice sounded uncertain. I trust Stephen. I turned slightly toward Monica, and I trust my wife. Harold cleared his throat and slid the document closer to me. Christopher, he said carefully. If you sign here, you'll be transferring full executive authority to Stephen Barrett. I reached for the pen. My hand trembled as I picked it up. Part performance, part genuine fear. The entire plan depended on what happened next. I signed my name. Stephen exhaled quietly, an unmistakable sound of relief. He pulled the document toward himself and studied the signature carefully. Thank you, Christopher, he said. This is the right decision. And then something happened. Something none of them expected me to notice. Monica reached across the table. She placed her hand on top of Stephen's. The gesture wasn't professional. It wasn't polite. It was intimate. Her fingers curled around his hand, and Stephen turned his palm upward, holding hers. Their hands fit together with the easy familiarity of two people who had done this many times before. I kept my face blank, my gaze unfocused, as if I hadn't even seen it. Monica spoke softly, her voice low. 3 years, Stephen. Her tone carried quiet satisfaction. 3 years pretending to be the devoted wife. She glanced briefly at me. But it's done now. Stephen's smile widened. Almost done. He leaned back comfortably in his chair. Once he's in Emerald Heights, we move everything offshore. The accounts, the assets, all of it. Monica nodded toward Dr. Mitchell. And after that, her voice turned colder. We won't need him anymore. The words lingered in the air. Vincent's face had gone pale. Harold gripped the edge of the table so tightly, his knuckles turned white. Stephen leaned forward again, studying me with open satisfaction. 15 years, Christopher, he said conversationally. 15 years, watching you take credit for my work. His eyes burned with resentment. Watching you marry the woman I loved. Watching you build an empire using the design I created. He gestured toward the room. The sweeping view of Seattle, the polished glass table, the Vale Development logo etched into the door. All of this should have been mine. He smiled, and now it finally will be. Monica squeezed his hand again. We should leave soon, she murmured. Henderson expects us at Emerald Heights by 10. Her gaze flicked toward me. The sooner he's settled in, the sooner we can start the legal paperwork. Stephen nodded, still smiling. Vincent, Harold. He stood up, collecting the signed documents. Thank you both for being here today. I know this situation is difficult, but it's what's best for Christopher and for the company. Vincent looked as though he wanted to speak, but no words came. Dr. Mitchell snapped his portfolio closed. I'll call the facility, he said smoothly. Let them know we're on our way. Monica rose from her chair and slipped her arm under mine. Come on, sweetheart, she said gently. Let's get you somewhere safe. I allowed her to help me stand. My movements slow, unsteady. Stephen tucked the documents into a folder and buttoned his suit jacket. His posture was relaxed, victorious. He believed the game was over. 15 years of resentment, 3 years of manipulation, months of poisoning and deception, and now they had everything. Stephen walked toward the conference room door. Monica guided me beside him. Dr. Mitchell followed behind. Harold remained seated. Vincent stared down at the table. Stephen reached for the door handle, then he paused. His head tilted slightly, as if he had heard something, or sensed something. The atmosphere in the room had changed. It was subtle, but undeniable. The air felt different now. Tighter, charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. Stephen and Monica thought I couldn't hear them anymore. They thought the man slumped in the chair at the head of the table, confused, vacant, barely present, was already gone. But I heard every word. Stephen's voice dropped low, tight with tension. He was still standing near the door, his hand resting on the handle, but he'd turned back to face Monica. Our agreement was 50-50, he said, his voice hard. Half the estate, half the insurance payout. That was the deal. Monica's expression didn't change. She stood beside my chair, her hand still resting on my arm, her posture calm and composed. Was it? She said coolly. I don't recall signing anything, Stephen. His jaw tightened. Monica, you wanted revenge on Christopher. You got it. He's about to spend the rest of his life locked in a care facility, slowly losing his mind. Isn't that what you wanted? Stephen took a step toward her, his voice rising. We had a deal. I helped you plan this. I paid you $50,000. I gave you access to the company, to the financials, to everything you needed. You don't get to cut me out now. Monica's smile was cold, sharp as a blade. You helped me because you wanted to destroy him. The money was never really what mattered to you, was it? You wanted him to suffer. And he will. She gestured toward me, still slumped in the chair. You got exactly what you wanted, Stephen. Be grateful. Stephen's face darkened. You've done this before, haven't you, Brooks? Morrison? How many men have you? He stopped himself, but the words hung in the air. Monica tilted her head slightly, her expression almost amused. Only the ones foolish enough to trust me. The room went silent. Vincent Caldwell looked like he was going to be sick. Harold sat perfectly still, his face pale. Stephen stared at Monica, and for the first time, I saw something crack in his composure. You told me we were just going to scare Chloe, make her disappear for a while, let Christopher think she was gone. You said she'd be safe. Monica's smile faded. Her eyes narrowed. You said she was staying somewhere comfortable. Stephen continued, his voice getting louder. A hotel, maybe a rental property. But that's not true, is it? What room were you talking about, Monica? What did you do? I watched his face carefully. The shock was real. The horror was real. Stephen Barrett had wanted to destroy me. He'd helped Monica poison me, manipulate me, set me up for conservatorship and financial ruin. But he hadn't known about the room. He hadn't known Chloe was locked in a soundproofed cell beneath Monica's office, starving and terrified, for 6 months. Monica opened her mouth to respond. And that's when I stood up. The movement was smooth, deliberate. No trembling, no confusion. I straightened my shoulders, pulled the recording pen from my shirt pocket, and set it on the conference table with a soft click. But I'm not a fool, I said, my voice clear and steady. And I heard every word. The room froze. Monica's face went white. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Stephen turned toward me, his eyes wide with shock. Christopher. Every confession. I continued looking directly at Monica. Every plan, every lie, all of it recorded. The door to the conference room burst open. Special Agent Michelle Barnes stepped inside, flanked by 6 federal agents in dark suits and bulletproof vests. Their expressions were hard, professional, focused. Monica Cross. Agent Barnes said, her voice calm and authoritative, also known as Victoria Brooks and Vivian Cross. You are under arrest for kidnapping, conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted conservatorship, fraud, forgery, and conspiracy in connection with the suspicious passings of James Brooks and Patrick Morrison. 2 agents moved toward Monica. She took a step back, her face twisting with rage. You have no proof I did anything illegal, she spat. Agent Barnes pulled a tablet from her jacket and turned it toward Monica. On the screen was a grainy black and white image, a small concrete room with a single bed, a mini refrigerator, and a young woman curled up on the mattress. Chloe. We have 6 months of surveillance footage from the hidden room in your office, Agent Barnes said. We have the recorded confessions from the last 10 minutes, including your admission of involvement in previous cases, and we have testimony from your victim. Monica's eyes flicked to the tablet, then back to Agent Barnes. For the first time, I saw fear in her face. One of the agents stepped forward with handcuffs. Turn around, please. Monica didn't move. I want a lawyer. You'll get one. Agent Barnes nodded, and the agents took Monica by the arms. She jerked away, but they held her firmly, turning her around and cuffing her wrists behind her back. Dr. Mitchell, or whoever he really was, tried to move toward the door. Another agent stepped in front of him, blocking his path. Dr. Howard Mitchell, Agent Barnes said, turning toward him. Or should I call you Alan Brennan? Impersonating a medical professional is a federal offense. You're also under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and aiding in the unlawful detention of Chloe Vale. Alan's face crumpled. He didn't resist as the agents cuffed him. Stephen stood frozen in the middle of the room, staring at me. His face was ashen, his hands shaking. Stephen Barrett, Agent Barnes said. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and financial crimes related to this case. Wait, Stephen's voice cracked. I didn't know about the room. I didn't know she was hurting Chloe. You thought you could destroy a man's life and walk away clean, I said quietly. You were wrong. An agent moved toward him with cuffs. Stephen didn't fight. He just stared at me, his face hollow. 15 years, he whispered. You took everything from me. No, I said. You gave it away. The agents led them toward the door. Monica still struggling, Alan silent, and defeated Stephen broken. Agent Barnes looked at me. Mr. Vale, are you all right? I nodded. I wasn't sure if it was true, but I nodded anyway. There's one more thing, she said gently. She stepped aside, and the door opened again. Chloe walked into the conference room. Chloe stood in the doorway. For a brief moment, the entire room seemed to stop breathing. She looked stronger than the last time I had seen her, stronger than the fragile figure I had lifted out of that hidden room beneath Monica's office. Her face was still pale, still marked by the weight she had lost during those 6 months of captivity. But something in her had changed. Her eyes were clear now, focused. There was a quiet strength in them that hadn't been there before. She had walked through hell and come out the other side. Monica stared at her like someone confronted by a ghost. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. Chloe stepped into the conference room slowly, each step deliberate. The FBI agents standing near the door moved aside to allow her through. Her gaze never left Monica, You told me I'd stay in that room for 7 years, Chloe said. Her voice was calm, steady. You said that by the time those 7 years passed, Dad would be gone. The legal paperwork would be finished, and no one would care about me anymore. Monica's jaw tightened. She didn't respond. Chloe continued moving closer. Every week you came down there, she said. You brought food, just enough to keep me alive. Her voice hardened slightly. And you talked. She stopped a few steps away from Monica. You told me stories. The room remained perfectly still. You told me about James Brooks, Chloe said. Monica's eyes flickered just for a moment. You told me how easy it was to make him trust you. How he signed over his accounts just 3 weeks before he died. Chloe's expression remained controlled. You said he never suspected anything. Monica's face remained cold and unreadable, but I saw something shift deep in her eyes. Fear, or perhaps anger. And Patrick Morris and Chloe continued. You said he was more difficult. It took almost 2 years before he trusted you completely. She paused. But eventually he believed everything you told him. Her voice dropped slightly, right up until the moment he fell down those stairs. The silence in the room deepened. Chloe folded her hands loosely at her sides. You told me something else, she said. Her eyes hardened. You said men are easy to manipulate? Her voice echoed softly in the room. You said they think with their hearts, never with their minds. Chloe held Monica's gaze. You were proud of that. For a moment, no one moved. Then Chloe turned slowly toward Stephen. He stood near the conference table, frozen. His face had gone pale. And you, Chloe said quietly. Uncle Stephen. The words hung in the air. You gave her everything. Her voice was sharper now. Dad's financial records, his weaknesses. She stepped closer to him. You told her about Mom. You told her how devastated Dad was after losing her. Stephen closed his eyes. You helped her study my father like he was some kind of target, Chloe continued. You told her exactly how to break him. Stephen's voice came out strained. Chloe. I didn't know she was going to. You knew enough, Chloe said firmly. Agent Barnes stepped forward, then placing a gentle hand on Chloe's shoulder. That's enough for now, she said softly. Chloe nodded once and stepped back, but her eyes remained locked on Monica. Agent Barnes turned toward Monica, her expression cool and professional. We have more than testimony, Miss Cross, she said. A lot more. One of the agents stepped forward and placed a thick folder on the conference table. He opened it. Inside were photographs, lab reports, and official documents stamped with state seals. Last week, Agent Barnes said we obtained court authorization to exhume 2 bodies. She slid the first report across the table. James Brooks. Her voice remained calm. Toxicology results show arsenic present in the bone tissue. She tapped the page. Additionally, insulin levels at the time of death were abnormally high. Agent Barnes glanced at Monica. Mr. Brooks had no history of diabetes. She slid another report forward. Patrick Morrison. Same result. Arsenic detected. Elevated insulin levels. Again, no diabetes. Agent Barnes folded her hands. You poisoned them slowly. Small doses of arsenic over time. Enough to weaken them, make them appear ill, but not enough to trigger immediate suspicion. Her voice sharpened slightly. And when the moment was right, you finished it with insulin. She paused. Insulin overdoses often resemble natural medical emergencies. Heart failure, stroke. Most people never question it. Agent Barnes looked directly at Monica. But we questioned it. And we found exactly what we expected. She reached into the folder again and pulled out another document. This one looked older. The edges of the paper were yellowed with age. We also investigated your family history, she said. Or should I say, Ms. Brennan. Monica's eyes narrowed. Your father, Robert Brennan, died in 1998 when you were 15. Agent Barnes placed the report on the table. Official cause of death, sudden heart failure. She leaned forward slightly. You inherited $200,000 from his life insurance. The room felt colder. We exhumed him as well. Her voice was quiet. Arsenic. The word hung in the air. You killed your own father when you were still a teenager. Agent Barnes studied Monica. And you've continued doing it ever since, 26 years. I turned slowly toward the man standing beside the agents, Alan Brennan. His face was pale, drained. And he helped you, I said quietly. The realization struck with painful clarity. Your brother. Agent Barnes nodded. Half-brother, she corrected. Same father, different mother. She glanced toward Alan. He was 26 when Robert Brennan died. He was studying pre-med at the time. Her eyes sharpened. He dropped out the following year. She looked back at Monica. He taught you, didn't he? How to dose the poison, how to make it look natural, how to avoid detection. Alan Brennan said nothing. He simply stared down at the floor. Monica finally spoke. Her voice was cold. You can't prove any of this. Agent Barnes smiled slightly. It wasn't a friendly smile. Actually, Ms. Brennan, she said. We can. And we will. She nodded toward the agents. Take them. 2 agents stepped forward and took Monica by the arms. She jerked violently against them, fury blazing across her face. I want a lawyer, she snapped. Do you hear me? I want a lawyer right now. You'll get one, Agent Barnes replied calmly. In the meantime, you're under arrest. She listed the charges one by one. 7 counts of conspiracy. 4 counts connected to suspicious deaths. Kidnapping, fraud, forgery, and attempted murder of Christopher Vale. Another agent stepped toward Alan Brennan. He didn't resist. He simply allowed them to guide him toward the door. His shoulders slumped. The fight had left him. The agents escorted Monica and Alan out of the room. The door shut behind them with a heavy click. Stephen remained seated at the conference table, handcuffed, motionless, his gaze fixed on nothing. His face looked hollow, drained, like a man who had just watched his entire life collapse. Because he had. He sat there without speaking, without moving, completely broken. Before the FB, I took Stephen away. He asked to speak with me privately. Agent Barnes looked at me, her expression questioning. I nodded. 5 minutes, she said. Supervised. She gestured to 2 agents who positioned themselves near the door. Everyone else filed out. Vincent Harold, the rest of the FBI team. Even Chloe left, though she squeezed my hand once before she went. The conference room fell quiet. Stephen sat across from me, still handcuffed. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. He looked like a man who'd already been convicted, already sentenced, and was simply waiting for the execution. You don't remember anything about Millennium Tower, do you? He said quietly. I looked straight at him. I remember. I stole your design. I erased your name from the presentation. I took credit for work that was yours. Stephen's jaw tightened. You destroyed my career before it even started. That project was my future. It was supposed to be my breakthrough. I nodded slowly. I was wrong, Stephen. I was ambitious and selfish, and I took something that didn't belong to me. But that was 15 years ago. We could have worked it out. We could have talked. Stephen let out a bitter laugh. Yeah, worked it out. What about Jennifer? I froze. I loved her first, Christopher. His voice cracked. I proposed to her in 2011. I told her I wanted to build a life with her. She said no. She said she cared about me, but not that way. He looked down at his cuffed hands. 6 months later, she started dating you. The room was silent except for the hum of the building's ventilation system. I lost my career to you, Stephen said. I lost the woman I loved to you. And I stayed. I kept working for you, kept smiling, kept pretending everything was fine. Because what else could I do? His voice dropped to almost a whisper. And then in 2019, Jennifer discovered I was embezzling from the company. My chest tightened. I had gambling debts, Stephen continued. Bad ones. I'd been taking money from the accounts for almost 2 years, just enough to stay ahead of the people I owed. I thought I could pay it back before anyone noticed. He looked up at me. But Jennifer noticed. She came to me in October of 2019 and told me she was going to report me to the board. She said she didn't want to, but she couldn't let me keep stealing from the company her father built. I was going to lose everything. Again. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I contacted Monica, Stephen said. Online. I was desperate, looking for anyone who could help me disappear, start over something. She found me on some forum. She said she could make the problem go away. He swallowed hard. I thought she meant blackmail. Threats. Maybe she'd scare Jennifer into keeping quiet. I don't know. I wasn't thinking clearly. His voice broke. I didn't know she was going to take Jennifer's life. I stood up so fast my chair scraped across the floor with a harsh screech. What? Stephen looked up at me, his eyes red. Jennifer didn't pass naturally, Christopher. Monica posed as a nutritionist. September 2019. She came to the house you were at work. She told Jennifer she was conducting a wellness study for women with heart conditions. She gave Jennifer supplements. Vitamins, she called them. My hands were shaking. It was digitalis, Stephen said. Extract from foxglove. In patients with pre-existing heart conditions, it mimics a heart attack perfectly. No one questions it. Jennifer passed on November 14, 2019. Cardiac arrest. The doctors said it was expected given her condition. No one suspected anything. I couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. I didn't know, Stephen said, his voice barely audible. I swear I didn't know until after. Monica told me at the funeral. She pulled me aside, smiled, and said, "Now you owe me." He closed his eyes. That's when she told me the plan for you. She said she'd been watching you for months. She knew about your grief, your loneliness, your guilt over Jennifer. She said you'd be easy. She told me I'd help her, or she'd tell the police I'd hired her to take Jennifer's life. She had records, emails, messages I'd sent when I was panicking. She could make it look like I'd orchestrated the whole thing. So I helped her. I sank back into my chair, my legs unable to hold me up. Monica had taken Jennifer's life. Not heart failure, not a tragic accident of genetics and bad luck. She'd been poisoned. Slowly. Deliberately. And Stephen had been the one who'd brought Monica into our lives. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Stephen said quietly. I know there's nothing I can say that will make this right. I just wanted you to know why. I looked at him, this man I'd worked with for 18 years, this man I'd called a friend, this man who'd stood beside me at Jennifer's memorial and told me he was sorry for my loss. You had a right to be angry with me, I said, my voice hollow. You had a right to hate me for what I did. But you didn't just want revenge, Stephen. You helped take my wife's life. You helped imprison my daughter. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on his. You became something far worse than I ever was. Stephen said nothing. There was nothing left to say. Agent Barnes opened the door. Time's up. The two agents moved forward and helped Stephen to his feet. He didn't resist. He didn't look at me again. They led him out of the conference room. The door closed. I sat alone at the long conference table, surrounded by empty chairs and the ghosts of everything I'd lost. Jennifer. The woman I'd loved for 25 years. The woman I'd built a life with. The woman I'd mourned as a cruel twist of fate. She'd been taken from me. And I'd never known. January 2025, 2 months had passed since the raid at Columbia Center. I sat in the sentencing chamber of the King County Superior Court, the winter chill of Seattle matching the coldness in my heart. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the back rows, their cameras pointed at the defense table where Monica sat in an orange jumpsuit, her hands cuffed in front of her. She looked smaller, somehow diminished, without the careful hair and designer clothes she'd always worn. But her eyes were still sharp, still calculating. She'd changed her plea to guilty 3 weeks ago. Her lawyers had negotiated a deal with the prosecution confessions to all charges in exchange for avoiding the possibility of execution. Monica wanted to live, and she wanted something else too. She wanted to be known. Over the past 3 months, the FBI had continued their investigation into Monica's past. What they'd found was worse than anyone had expected. 7 victims. Not 4. Not 5. 7. The prosecution had laid it all out in court over the last 2 days. I'd sat through every minute of it listening as they detailed each case, each life Monica had taken. Robert Brennan, her father. 1998. Arsenic. $200,000 in life insurance. Michael Torres, a widower she'd met in Reno. 1999. Insulin overdose. $350,000. David Castellano, a real estate investor in Phoenix. 2005. Digitalis. $800,000. Richard Holbrook, a retired surgeon in Scottsdale. 2011. Arsenic and insulin. $1.2 million. James Brooks, Las Vegas. 2015. Arsenic and insulin. $720,000. Patrick Morrison, Phoenix. 2019. Arsenic and insulin. $1.1 million. Jennifer Vale, Seattle. 2019. Digitalis. $52 million if the plan had succeeded. 7 men and women. 7 lives erased over 26 years. The media had been relentless. They called her the Black Widow of Seattle. Cable news ran specials. True crime podcasts dissected every detail. Monica's face was everywhere, and she loved it. I could see it in the way she sat in court, the way she listened to the testimony, the way she occasionally smiled when a particularly damning piece of evidence was presented. She wasn't ashamed. She was proud. This was her legacy, her story. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Margaret Thornton, sat behind the bench, her expression unreadable as she reviewed the sentencing documents. Monica Marie Brennan, Judge Thornton said, her voice echoing through the silent courtroom. You have pleaded guilty to 7 counts of first-degree involvement in suspicious passings, 4 counts of fraud, 2 counts of kidnapping, and multiple counts of conspiracy. The court has reviewed your plea agreement and accepts it. She looked up, her gaze fixed on Monica. You are hereby sentenced to 7 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. You will serve your sentence at the Washington Corrections Center for Women. Monica didn't react. She just sat there, her face blank. Judge Thornton turned to the next defendant. Stephen Andrew Barrett. You have pleaded guilty to conspiracy in connection with the passing of Jennifer Vale, conspiracy to commit fraud and kidnapping. You are sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. Stephen sat with his head bowed. He didn't look up. He didn't look at me. Alan Joseph Brennan. You have pleaded guilty to impersonating a medical professional, conspiracy to commit fraud, conspiracy to administer harmful substances, and kidnapping. You are sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Alan nodded slightly, as if he'd expected nothing less. The judge set down her papers. This court also notes that Detective Robert Hayes of the Seattle Police Department has been formally reprimanded for his inadequate investigation into the disappearance of Chloe Vale. His failure to follow proper protocol allowed this conspiracy to continue for months longer than it should have. I glanced at Chloe, who sat beside me in the gallery. She'd given testimony earlier in the week, clear, powerful, unflinching. She'd told the court about the 6 months she'd spent in that concrete room, about Monica's weekly visits, about the things Monica had told her. She'd been stronger than I ever could have imagined. Judge Thornton looked out at the courtroom. This case represents one of the most calculated and prolonged criminal conspiracies this court has ever seen. The victims and their families deserve justice. Today, they have it. She struck her gavel once. Court is adjourned. The room erupted in noise, reporters scrambling for the doors, lawyers gathering their files, bailiffs moving to escort the defendants out. But I stayed in my seat watching as Monica was led toward the side door. Our eyes met across the courtroom. Her lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear over the noise. But I could read them. "You really loved me, didn't you?" I looked away. I wouldn't give her that. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of knowing she'd broken something in me that could never be fixed. The bailiffs led her out. The door closed behind her. Outside the courthouse, the media was waiting. Cameras, microphones, reporters shouting questions as Chloe and I made our way down the steps. "Mr. Vale, how do you feel about the sentencing? Chloe, what do you want to say to other victims? Do you think justice was served?" I stopped at the bottom of the steps and looked into the cameras. "My daughter is safe," I said. "Justice has been served. That's all that matters." Chloe squeezed my hand. We walked to the car together, ignoring the rest of the questions. But inside, I felt hollow. Jennifer had been taken from me, poisoned. Her life stolen by a woman I'd invited into our home, a woman I'd married, a woman I'd trusted, and I'd never known. For 5 years I'd mourned her as a loss I couldn't prevent. I'd grieved her as a tragedy of biology and bad luck, but it had been neither. It had been calculated, deliberate, cold, and no sentence, no amount of justice could bring her back. I drove home alone, the city passing by outside my window in a blur of gray and rain. Chloe had gone to stay with Harold and Linda for a few days. She needed space, time to process everything that had happened. I understood. I pulled into the driveway of the house in Broadmoor, the house Jennifer and I had bought together, the house where we'd raised Chloe, the house where Monica had lived and smiled and planned my destruction. I sat in the car for a long time, staring at the front door. Justice had been served, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like loss, and no verdict could undo that. February 2025. I spent 8 weeks in detoxification, working with specialists to clear the drugs from my system. The doctors had been cautiously optimistic. The donepezil, the lorazepam, the zolpidem, all of it had damaged my cognitive function, but not permanently. With time, rest, and proper treatment, I was expected to make a full recovery. My memory was already clearer. The fog that had clouded my thoughts for months was finally lifting. Chloe deferred her senior year at Stanford. She said she needed time to heal, and I didn't argue. After everything she'd been through, 6 months in captivity, the trial, the media circus, she deserved to take as long as she needed. She was seeing a therapist twice a week. Dr. Sarah Miller, a trauma specialist, who worked with survivors of long-term captivity. Chloe didn't talk much about their sessions, but I could see the difference. She was sleeping better, smiling more. We were both learning how to live again. One evening in late May, we sat together on the back porch of the house in Broadmoor, looking out over Lake Washington. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of orange and gold. Chloe was quiet for a long time. Then she turned to me. "Dad, I need to tell you something about Mom." My chest tightened. Okay. She stood up and went inside. When she came back, she was holding a small, leather-bound book. The pages were worn, the edges frayed. "Before I was kidnapped, I found this," she said. "In the attic. I was looking for some old photo albums, and I found a box of Mom's things." She handed me the book. It was Jennifer's journal. My hands trembled as I opened it. Her handwriting filled the pages, neat, precise, unmistakably hers. "I've read it a dozen times," Chloe said quietly. "But I think you need to see it too." We sat together, and I read. Most of the entries were ordinary notes about work, about Chloe's school events, about plans for the garden. But then I reached September 2019. September 18th, 2019. A woman came to the house today. She said she was a nutritionist, specializing in cardiac health. She knew so much about my condition, things I hadn't told anyone outside my medical team. She offered to help me develop a meal plan, gave me some supplements to try. But something felt wrong. How did she know where I lived? How did she know about my heart condition in the first place? I took her card, but I don't think I'll call her back. My breath caught. I turned the page. October 22nd, 2019. I found discrepancies in the company finances today. Stephen's department. Transfers that don't match up, accounts that shouldn't exist. I confronted him about it after the board meeting. He got defensive, said I was mistaken, that I didn't understand the full picture. But I'm not mistaken. I've been going over the numbers for weeks. I need to talk to Harold. I need to know what to do. I could barely see the words through the blur of tears. And then I reached the final entry. November 13th, 2019. If something happens to me, please someone, anyone who reads this, please protect Chloe and Christopher. I think someone is watching us. I've seen the same car on our street 3 times this week. The nutritionist called again yesterday, even though I never gave her my number. I think I'm in danger. But I don't want to scare them. I don't want to make Christopher worry when he's already dealing with so much at work. I don't want to frighten Chloe before her finals. I just want to keep them safe. If something happens, please tell them I love them. Please tell them it wasn't their fault. The next page was blank. Jennifer had passed the following day. I covered my face with my hands and cried for the first time since her funeral. Not the quiet, controlled grief I'd allowed myself over the past 5 years. This was raw, broken, the kind of crying that comes from deep in your chest and tears you apart. Chloe put her arms around me and held on tight. "Dad," she whispered. I found this journal in early 2024. I started investigating. I was trying to prove that Mom was taken. I was digging into Monica's background, into Stephen's finances. I was getting close. She pulled back, looking at me with red-rimmed eyes. That's when Monica found out. That's why she took me. I stared at her, the pieces finally falling into place. Chloe hadn't been kidnapped just for the inheritance. She'd been kidnapped because she was close to uncovering the truth about her mother. "You were trying to save her," I said, my voice breaking. "Even after all these years." Chloe nodded. I knew something was wrong. I just couldn't prove it. We sat together in silence for a long time, the journal resting between us. Finally, I told her about Millennium Tower, about stealing Stephen's design 15 years ago, about erasing his name and taking credit for his work. "I'm not innocent in this, Chloe. I started this. My arrogance, my ambition, it created the man who helped take your mother from us." Chloe looked at me, her expression serious. "Dad, what you did was wrong, but what Stephen did was a crime. You made a mistake. He chose revenge. There's a difference." Over the next few weeks, I wrote letters to Stephen's ex-wife and children, apologizing for the role I'd played in his downfall, acknowledging that my actions 15 years ago had set him on a dark path. To the families of Monica's other victims, Michael Torres, David Castellano, Richard Holbrook, James Brooks, Patrick Morrison. I told them I was sorry. I told them their loved ones deserved justice. Most of them didn't reply. I understood. I also made another decision. I announced my resignation as CEO of Vale Development. I hired Rebecca Thornton, 55 years old, 30 years of experience in sustainable architecture, a reputation for integrity and ethical leadership. She would take over the company's daily operations. I would remain as chairman of the board, but the work of running the company would belong to someone who wasn't tainted by this nightmare. Chloe and I sat on the porch again that evening watching the sun set over the lake. "What do we do now?" she asked. I looked at her, my daughter, my survivor, the strongest person I'd ever known. "We honor your mother," I said. "We do what she would have wanted. We help people." Chloe nodded, a small smile crossing her face. "The Jennifer Vale Foundation." "Yes." "We would build something good from all this pain. We would make sure Jennifer's legacy wasn't just a life taken too soon, but a life that continued to make a difference. It wouldn't bring her back, but it was a start." March 2025. Chloe came to me with a proposal. "Dad, I want to turn Mom's legacy into something that helps people." We were sitting in the study, the late afternoon sun streaming through the windows. She had a folder full of notes, research plans. "What are you thinking?" I asked. "A foundation, the Jennifer Vale Foundation. For people like us, people who were targeted, manipulated, hurt by the people they trusted most." Over the next month, we built it together. The Jennifer Vale Foundation's mission was clear: to support victims of marriage fraud, hidden domestic violence, and financial abuse by partners. We focused on 5 areas: legal aid, free lawyers for victims who couldn't afford representation; private investigation services in partnership with Sharon Mitchell; therapy and counseling for survivors; safe housing for those escaping dangerous situations; and education programs to help people recognize the warning signs before it was too late. We donated $5 million as initial funding. Sharon Mitchell joined as Director of Investigations, bringing her expertise and her network of contacts. Harold Peterson handled the legal framework pro bono. Rebecca Thornton Vale, Development's new CEO, through the company's support behind the foundation, providing resources and office space. And Chloe became the public face. She gave a TED Talk in October. The Room: 6 Months in Captivity and How I Survived. Within 2 weeks, it had 8 million views. She was interviewed on CNN, NBC, and local news stations. She started a blog called Surviving the Unseen, where she wrote about hidden abuse, manipulation tactics, and recovery. Hundreds of people reached out. "I think my husband is drugging me. My wife locks me in the house when she leaves. I'm being financially isolated. I don't have access to our accounts anymore." The foundation helped 47 people in the first 3 months alone. Vincent Caldwell donated 15% of his shares in Vale Development to the foundation's endowment, ensuring it would have long-term stability. At the foundation's opening ceremony in November, a woman approached Chloe. She was in her early 40s, nervous, clutching a folder of documents. "Ms. Vale, I read your blog. I think my husband is drugging me. Can you help?" Chloe took her hand. "Yes, we can help." I stood in the back of the room, watching my daughter turn pain into purpose. This was Jennifer's legacy. Not the money, not the company. This. 1 year after I'd pulled the pen from Monica's desk, I stood at Lakeview Cemetery in front of Jennifer's grave. White roses, her favorite, rested in my hands. "I know now, Jen," I said quietly. "I know what happened. I know you tried to warn me, tried to protect us. I'm sorry I didn't see it. I'm sorry I wasn't there." I placed the roses on the headstone. "But Chloe's safe, and she's strong. God, she's so strong. You'd be so proud of her. I heard footsteps behind me and turned. Chloe was walking up the path carrying her own flowers. She knelt beside me and placed them next to mine. She would be proud of you too, Dad. We sat together in silence for a while. I'm going back to Stanford next month, Chloe said. I'm going to finish my degree, criminal psychology. I want to understand why people become this way. That's good, I said. That's really good. I wrote to Uncle Stephen, she added quietly. In prison. I looked at her. Did he write back? Last week. He said he doesn't expect forgiveness, but he's glad we're helping people. I'd written to Stephen too. I'd told him I was establishing the Stephen Barrett Scholarship Fund for struggling architecture students who couldn't afford tuition. It wouldn't erase what I'd done to him 15 years ago, but it was a start. His reply had been brief. Christopher, I don't forgive you, but I forgive myself for becoming something worse than you ever were. About the scholarship. Thank you. It's more than I deserve. Chloe and I walked back to the car together. Dad, she said as we reached the parking lot. Do you think you'll ever trust someone again? I thought about that. I don't know, but I think your mom would want me to try. Carefully, Chloe added. Very carefully, I agreed. We drove home through the Seattle rain. Chloe turned on the radio and a song Jennifer used to love filled the car. I thought about everything I'd learned over the past year. Betrayal doesn't come with sirens and flashing lights. It comes quietly. A pill in your coffee. A smile across the breakfast table. A plan set in motion years before you ever see it coming. The people who hurt us most are the ones we invite closest. But survival isn't just about escaping the room they lock you in. It's about learning to trust again, carefully, wisely, but still willing to try. Because a life without trust isn't freedom. It's just another kind of prison. At home, I walked into my study and stood at my desk. In a glass case carefully preserved was the Mont Blanc pen, Chloe's pen. The one I'd pulled from Monica's desk a year ago. The key that had opened the wall. The key that had saved my daughter's life. It wasn't a reminder of what we'd lost. It was a reminder of what we'd found. Sometimes the key to the truth is hidden in plain sight. Right there in front of us, disguised as something ordinary. We just have to be brave enough to pull it. I closed the study door behind me and walked downstairs where Chloe was making tea in the kitchen, humming the same song that had been on the radio. She looked up and smiled. Ready for dinner? Yeah, I said. I'm ready. We'd survived. We'd healed. We'd built something good from the wreckage. And now, finally, we were ready to begin the next chapter. If there's one thing this family story taught me, it's this: trust isn't weakness, but blindness is. I invited a stranger into my home, into my life, into the place where our family story was built, through years of love, sacrifice, and memories. I didn't ask enough questions. I ignored the small warning signs. And because of that, my daughter endured 6 months of unimaginable suffering. And I nearly lost everything Jennifer had worked so hard to protect. Don't make the same mistake I did. When someone enters your life promising to heal your loneliness or complete your family story, take a moment to pause. Ask questions. Look deeper. Verify their past. Trust is powerful, but trust without awareness can be dangerous. Stephen wanted revenge for what I had taken from him 15 years ago. I understand the anger he carried. But revenge can become something darker when it grows unchecked. When he chose to stand beside a woman who had been destroying lives for 26 years, revenge stopped being justice and became something far more dangerous. Here's what life taught me through this journey: betrayal rarely arrives with warning. It doesn't shout or announce itself. Instead, it sits across from you at the breakfast table. It kisses you goodnight. And sometimes it quietly plans your downfall while you sleep. But survival isn't just escaping the darkness. Survival is finding the courage to trust again, slowly, wisely, and with open eyes. God gave us instincts for a reason. Jennifer sensed something was wrong and wrote it down. Chloe felt something was wrong and searched for the truth. I ignored my instincts because I was afraid of being alone, and that nearly cost us everything. Stories like this remind me why people share grandpa stories across generations, because wisdom is often born from pain. Some of the most powerful lessons come from grandpa stories that teach us how to recognize danger, protect our families, and never ignore the quiet voice of intuition. This grandpa stories journey isn't just about loss or betrayal. It's about resilience. It's about a father and daughter finding strength after the worst kind of deception. Thank you for walking through this family story with me. Now I'd love to hear from you. If you found yourself in a situation like mine, where the person you trusted most turned out to be your greatest threat, what would you do? Your thoughts matter, and sharing them might help someone else who needs to hear it. If you enjoy listening to stories like this one, consider subscribing so you won't miss the next story. And as always, remember that while this narrative draws inspiration from real-world cases of marriage fraud and financial abuse, certain elements were dramatized for storytelling. If this kind of story isn't your preference, that's perfectly okay. There are many other videos you might enjoy. But if you stayed until the end of this story, thank you. Your time means more than you know.